Yeah. It's funny, I was smiling because I'm one of those clients. So my answer was full of my own biases of, if we can think about a solution, let's think up a solution. So I'm really glad that you've pulled this back, because there's another side to it as well. And so anyone that hasn't seen the video where I gave my initial answer, then I'd encourage you to watch that in conjunction with what I'm about to say. So I'll do the other side of it, and drawing here as much as I can on the ways that very frustrated therapists worked with me to try and get me to engage my right brain or my back brain, whichever way we want to look at it, and to do something other than thinking through things for a solution. And so when I was thinking about your question earlier, I kind of thought, well, what did I do to try and develop that gut sense of, is this person safe? Is this situation safe? Rather than just running through almost a sort of a flow chart or a checklist or a series of questions. And the memory that came to mind was of a yellow truck, like a yellow Tonka truck. And it made me laugh. It remembered the session where we were talking through these kinds of things in my session. And my therapist was saying, okay, well, that felt sense of whether someone is safe or not, it's not always correct. It's not always 100% infallible. But she was talking about how she approaches the world very much from a gut perspective first. And I'd really struggled to understand that because my gut instinct had been switched off for so long. I was so incapable really of tuning in and assessing anything from that. I just had the reactive back brain, but not the kind of the positive sense of back brain or right brain or whatever, where we have a gut response. So we worked on me identifying someone in my life, someone that I'd known a long time, who I felt was safe, and that I had the external objective evidence that this person was safe. So this was a friend that I'd been at school with, that I'm still friends with now. So a sort of a 40-year relationship that I'd had with this friend. Both of us massive football fans. We'd sit on the school bus together and talk about football on a Monday morning. And so this person has been objectively safe in my life. So I didn't need to do any of the kind of the cognitive checklists because that was already there. He's been a tremendous friend, a tremendous person in my life. And she said, okay, so now let's try and tune in to what your gut is saying in this. What is your body saying in response to this person? And I'd be like, I've no idea. And I'd bat it all off in that sense of, how that kind of wave of shame just starts to trickle in on you. And you think, I can't do this. I'm no good at it. Let's try something else. Back off. Leave me alone. And she just prodded and prompted me a little bit more and just said, let's just try. What's going on in you? And I sat there for a few seconds and felt ridiculous and felt stupid and felt like, this is something I can't do, and why am I being set up to fail, and all of those kinds of things that go on. But we persisted and just did our normal regulation things that we'd do. Just take a moment, just breathe. It's okay, you're safe. What image, what thought or what feeling, what comes up when you think of this friend? And I said, just blurted it out in a moment where it's like I either have to blurt it out or I'll never say it. I said, a yellow digger, like a yellow Tonka truck. And to her credit, I mean, I think she could have smiled, she could have laughed, she could have erupted. Instead, she was just had this look of intense curiosity on her face of like, yeah, so tell me more. What's this yellow digger like? Describe it to me. And so before I knew it, she just accepted it so effortlessly. Like she was expecting me to say yellow Tonka truck. It was like, oh yeah, I have lots of clients who'd say yellow Tonka truck. But she just took me into that way of talking about it and say, what does it look like and how big it is. And I remember talking about it, feeling a bit confused because I was like, but I thought we were talking about my gut. And I didn't realize until that moment, but I was being quite literal that when she said, what's your gut feeling? I was sort of like looking down towards my gut and kind of going, I don't know. Whereas when she changed the language of it and she said, what image comes to mind? Suddenly I've got an image straight away. And that was quite skilled on her part because she, over a period of time, got to know me and got to know that I operate in imagery, I operate in numbers, I operate in things that I see and little calculations I do in my head all the time. So talking to me about my gut feeling, I was drawing a blank almost because we weren't speaking the same language. But what she was doing, she was evoking the gut reaction with this sort of unconscious, spontaneous, this image of this yellow Tonka truck. And, the things about it that we then went on to describe, that it's solid and it's steady and it's dependable and all these things that were actually such a great description of my friend and how I saw him. And, some of his physical features, totally bizarrely, were reminiscent to me of in this Tonka truck. I did tell him that later. He wasn't too impressed. And so we had this discussion then of this, what comes to mind? And so from that point on, we started doing more of that, so more with people, with situations like, what's the first image that comes to mind? What's the colour that comes to mind? And we'd start just talking around that. And I realised that I'd never really tuned in to what was going on in my gut. I'd never really tuned into that back brain unconscious sense of it because I didn't believe that I was capable of doing it. Whereas as soon as we changed how it happened, so she could ask on other things, she could sort of say, well, what kind of colour or texture, what number, what, is it square, has it got sharp edges? And then I'd be able to, I felt ridiculous saying it, but I'd be able to put seemingly random words to this gut sense. And so the process that we went through then helped me to start to do that every time I was encountering somebody or something else and start to notice it. So it became a bit of a game for me. So rather than it being this thing that I can't do and I feel useless at and it evokes some shame in me, because it had this humorous element to it, I'd quite happily turn up in therapy the following week and say, there's this guy that I met at, he was on reception in this office thing and he was like, and then I'd just come out with the most ridiculous mental image. And that, there was we took it from there and we progressed it then onto the feeling that I had about that person and their feelings towards me and what was going on in them, because I find it quite hard to read people in the moment. And I realised that one of the difficulties I had was that I was being bombarded a lot of the time with this communication from, you could say, my gut, from my back brain, on my response to this person. But because it was in imagery that wasn't connected to words, I didn't know how to interpret it. So I realised that one person in one situation, I was struggling to understand what they were saying and meaning because, and I was looking at them, the shape of their eyebrows reminded me of the front of a Hyundai Tucson 4x4. And so I just got completely stuck on the fact that this person reminded me of a certain car. And my shame at that, my shame at being a bit weird, a bit quirky, a bit odd, a bit, that's not what most people do, had stopped me ever telling anybody that that's what goes on for me all the time. But this therapist's response to the yellow Tonka truck thing, like it's the most natural thing in the world, everybody refers to people in those terms, gave me that confidence to start telling her other imagery that came to mind, because that imagery was in effect my right brain or my back brain giving me data and giving me information, but I didn't know how to interpret it. And so the Hyundai Tucson eyebrows person, I had positive connotations, and that's what we explored then. It was just like, so tell me about a Hyundai Tucson. And I'd had one previously and I felt very safe in it, and I felt like quite high up in it, and I felt quite good about myself. And we explored all of that, and then started to be able to identify what was actually going on in me when I was having this imagery come up. Now, for someone else, it'll be completely different. It won't be imagery at all. It might just be that felt sense that, again, they can't put into words. And I think this is the difficulty and the bias, that when I talk about front brain strategies for assessing risk with the risk radar, part of that is because that's how I've principally done it. But I think secondly, it's because it's so much easier to talk in the language of the front brain, because the front brain uses words, whereas the back brain is so much this swirling vortex of something that even trying to say what it is, I can't find words for it. So I think it's sort of recognizing that and then tuning in to how that that client in that session with the things that they're struggling with, how they can find a way of communicating. Because I don't even think the main benefit of that piece of work that we did was me identifying yellow Tonka truck and identifying what safe felt like with a person. I think it was the therapist's attunement to me on it, of taking me completely seriously, taking me at face value, giving me a sense of respect, a sense of dignity in the way that I process information, and therefore opening up a channel for me then to take myself seriously and tune into whichever way I was getting gut feelings coming in. And so it did transform the way that I thought about myself, from being someone that just can't do gut feelings, that can't do intuition, to someone that does it really well. I just have to tune in more, and I have to spend the time and have the confidence to ask myself, what's going on? And a lot of the time, and it's very common with trauma, I'm sure you're familiar with it, we keep our minds so busy and active on anything other than tuning in to the inside that we don't hear the messages. And so that's what that started with me, was a way of tuning in that didn't feel scary, because it had this humorous element to it as well. Like you walk down the street and then you're thinking afterwards, what kind of vehicle is this person that I just met? And, I don't consciously go out of my way I haven't got you all labelled as different types of articulated lorries or tractors or anything, but it's just that humour with it, of not taking myself so seriously, so that I didn't feel so ashamed of not being able to do it. And then actually I found that once I gave the time to it and the effort, I built those skills and I tuned in much more quickly than I ever thought I would.